If you have $400,000 sitting in your RRSP and someone told you to melt it down early to dodge the tax hit at 71, stop and read this before you touch another withdrawal. For a single retiree, that kind of advice can quietly cost $7,000 a year in benefits you already earned. There's a mismatch nobody points out. Most of the retirement advice online is built for someone with a $2 million holding company, rental properties, and a full-time accountant. If your life looks more like a regular paycheck and a solid RRSP, the meltdown strategy made for that other person can work directly against you. I've watched this happen to people who did everything right for 30 years. The mechanism is simple and it's brutal. Pull an extra $1,000 out of your RRSP in the wrong year, and it can trigger up to $500 in lost guaranteed income supplement. That's not a tax bracket problem. That's a dollar-for-dollar penalty on money you spent decades setting aside. So this is what we're going to walk through. Your RRSP is not a ticking tax bomb that has to be defused by 71. It behaves more like the last card you play, not the first one. And there is a specific order that keeps your benefits intact while your money actually lasts through retirement. If you're tired of retirement advice that only seems to apply to people with corporations and stock portfolios the size of a small country, this channel is built for something different. We work through the real math for the 80% of Canadians who saved responsibly on a regular income and just want to keep what they earned. For a single senior in 2026, the number that actually decides your retirement isn't your RRSP balance. It's $22,800. That's the income line, where your guaranteed income supplement, worth up to $1,123.17 a month, starts shrinking. Cross it by enough, and that monthly check disappears completely. There's a piece most advice skips entirely. The standard playbook says to withdraw RRSP money steadily between 60 and 71 so your balance and your future RRIF payments stay smaller down the road. That looks tidy on a spreadsheet. In real life, every dollar you pull out counts as ordinary income to the CRA, the same as a paycheck, and income above that line reduces income-tested benefits dollar for dollar. The meltdown strategy was built around minimizing a future tax bill. It was never built with the GIS clawback in mind. Watch how this plays out with real numbers. Picture a single retiree at 65 collecting $12,000 a year from CPP. If they draw a modest $5,000 from their RRSP, total income lands at $17,000 and they still qualify for partial GIS. Now picture the same retiree following meltdown advice and pulling $20,000 from the RRSP instead. Income jumps to $32,000. GIS drops to zero. They saved roughly 15% in future tax. They lost $6,000 in guaranteed tax-free cash this year alone. That's not a small gap. For a lot of retirees, $6,000 covers a full year of property tax and hydro bills combined, sometimes more. And it's gone quietly with no letter of explanation, no red flag on a statement. The RRSP slip shows the tax withheld in black and white. The missing GIS just stops showing up in the bank account. This happens structurally, not by accident. GIS exists to top up seniors with the least other income, so by design it's tested against everything you report, including RRSP withdrawals. The CRA doesn't ask where the money came from or how long you saved for it. It only sees income. That's the invisible cost of the meltdown approach. You're not choosing between tax now or tax later. You're trading a guaranteed government payment today for a hypothetical tax saving decades out, one that assumes your income, your health, and the rules themselves all stay exactly as they are. They rarely do. I've seen people make this exact swap without meaning to, because the cost of taxes is visible, and the cost of lost benefits is invisible. Sit with the reversal for a second, though. What if your RRSP isn't $400,000? What if it's closer to $600,000 or $700,000? Does the same caution still apply once you're approaching the OAS clawback zone near $95,000 a year? The math shifts, and we're about to get into exactly how. This is the sequence that actually protects both your taxes and your government benefits, and none of it requires a corporation, a holding company, or a fancy accountant. It's 4 steps, and the order matters as much as the steps themselves. Step 1. Lean on your TFSA first. TFSA withdrawals never count as income anywhere, not for tax purposes and not for benefit testing. That means you can use TFSA money to bridge your living expenses in your early 60s without putting a single dent in your GIS eligibility. It's the only bucket of money in your entire retirement plan that the CRA truly cannot touch or count. Step 2. Delay CPP and OAS as long as you reasonably can. Every month you wait past 65 adds a permanent increase to the payment, up to 42% more for CPP if you wait until 70, and up to 36% more for OAS on the same timeline. That's not a market bet. It's a guaranteed, inflation-protected, government-backed raise, and there's nothing in a brokerage account that matches it. Step 3. Take RRSP withdrawals surgically instead of aggressively. Pull just enough to fill up your lowest tax bracket using your basic personal amount as the floor and stop there. This is the opposite of melting the account down as fast as possible. You're drawing exactly what the system lets you keep at close to $0 in tax, no more. Step 4. Once your needs go beyond that, lean on non-registered savings if you have them. Capital gains there only count 50% as taxable income, which softens the hit compared to a full RRSP withdrawal landing on top of everything else. The order matters because each step protects the one after it. TFSA money buys you time without touching benefits. Delaying CPP and OAS locks in a bigger, safer income floor for the rest of your life. Only once those two are in place do you touch the RRSP, and only in the amount the tax brackets actually reward. I used to tell almost everyone to empty their RRSPs as fast as possible, before the CRA could get a bigger bite of it later. I was wrong about that, or at least I had it half right. I wasn't accounting for what happens to your real effective tax rate once you factor in the benefits that quietly disappear along the way. I remember a client who pulled an extra $10,000 out of an RRSP to help cover a used car. It cost him his entire GIS payment for the year. It turned into the most expensive car he ever bought. Let's put real numbers behind this for someone with a $400,000 RRSP, since that covers a large share of retirees, not just the ones with corporations. At a 4% withdrawal rate, that's $16,000 a year from the RRSP. Add an average CPP payment of about $925 a month and OAS at $751.97 a month, and total income lands around $36,000 a year. This is the moment that changes how you see the so-called tax bomb. At $36,000 a year, your combined tax rate in most provinces stays minimal, and you're nowhere close to the OAS clawback line at $95,323. The tax hit people warn you about for decades isn't a bomb for someone in this position. It behaves more like a firecracker, loud sound, small impact. So if the bomb is mostly a myth for the 80% of Canadians sitting in this range, why do so many advisors still sound the alarm about age 71? Because there is one real event waiting at that age, the forced conversion to a RRIF, and there's exactly one way to handle it without losing your OAS in the process. That's what we're covering next. Statistics Canada puts average life expectancy at 65 around 19 to 22 more years. That means a lot of people watching this will still be here at 84, 87, even later. That number matters because it's the real timeline your RRSP has to last, not the scary headline about what happens if you die with money still sitting in it. The actual risk behind the panic looks like this. If you pass away with $400,000 still in an RRSP, the CRA treats the whole amount as if you earned it in a single year. In Ontario, that can mean a tax bill close to $185,000, close to 46% of the account, paid out of your estate before your family sees a dime. That number is real, and it's the reason the meltdown advice exists in the first place. It just solves the wrong problem for most retirees. The 46% rate only shows up when the entire balance lands in one tax year, all at once. Spread across 20 or more years of planned withdrawals, using the sequence from the last chapter, that same $400,000 rarely comes close to that rate while you're alive to actually spend it. Look back at 2008 for a preview of what happens when people try to outrun that fear. Retirees who rushed to melt down RRSPs into cash or non-registered accounts during that crash gave up the ability to let that money recover inside a tax-sheltered account. They locked in losses chasing a tax bill that, for most of them, was still decades away. You don't fix a problem that might happen after you're gone by creating a cash flow problem while you're still here to feel it. The goal was never to minimize what the CRA eventually collects. It's to maximize what you actually get to spend, month to month, for the 2 decades or more you're likely to be around to spend it. It's the difference between stretching a grocery budget at 80 and having the cash on hand to fix a leaking roof without a second thought. Think about it this way for a moment. Nobody plans a mortgage payment by asking how much interest adds up by year 30. They plan it around what they can comfortably afford each month, right now. Your RRSP deserves that same kind of thinking, not one distant number at 71 dictating every decision you make in the years leading up to it. Now picture the scenario nobody wants to think about, but many people eventually face in some form. At 75, your health changes and you suddenly need private home care or assisted living. The cost lands around $5,000 a month, close to $60,000 a year. Government data on senior care in Canada puts community-based assisted living costs right around that range. Care costs like this rarely arrive with warning. A fall, a diagnosis, a hospital stay, and the number you need this month looks nothing like the number you budgeted for the year. This is where the two paths split. The retiree who melted down their RRSP early to save on future tax is now living on CPP and OAS alone, roughly $20,000 a year combined. A $60,000 need against a $20,000 income leaves a $40,000 gap every single year, and that gap usually gets filled by selling the family home or leaning hard on adult children who already have their own mortgages and their own kids to worry about. The retiree who kept the RRSP mostly intact is in a different position entirely. They withdraw the $60,000 when they actually need it. Yes, they pay tax on it that year, at their marginal rate, same as anyone. But the RRSP just did exactly what it was built to do. It sat there, tax-deferred, growing, waiting for the 1 year a large lump sum was genuinely needed, instead of being spent down early chasing a tax saving that didn't have to happen yet. That's the part that gets lost in the melt it down early advice. An RRSP isn't only a retirement account. For a lot of people, it ends up functioning as a tax-deferred insurance policy against exactly this kind of shock, the kind you can't predict and can't schedule around. This isn't about assuming the worst is coming. It's about giving your money one job that cash spent down early simply can't do. Sit there, protected from tax, ready the moment life hands you something that wasn't in the plan. None of this needs a dramatic health crisis to start mattering either. Even a modest jump in prescription costs, or a pharmacy copay that used to be an afterthought, can strain a fixed CPP and OAS income once the RRSP cushion is already gone. Small pressures add up the same way large ones do, just slower and quieter. So how do you actually put this into practice without needing the kind of accountant only a millionaire can afford? That's what we cover next. Let's make this practical. 3 moves you can put to work with the numbers available in 2026. Move 1. Use your TFSA as a bridge. The 2026 contribution limit is $7,000, but what matters more is whatever you've already built up in that account over the years. That balance can top up your lifestyle between 60 and 65 without adding a single dollar of taxable income. That's what gives you room to delay CPP without feeling squeezed in the meantime. Move 2. Find your basic personal amount floor. For 2026, the federal basic personal amount sits at $16,452, with a separate provincial amount stacked on top of that. Withdraw RRSP money up to roughly that combined floor, and you're pulling out money taxed at close to $0. Go past it, and every additional dollar starts getting taxed at your marginal rate, the same rate that applies to a paycheck. A retiree drawing $18,000 from an RRSP to stay near that floor keeps almost all of it, while pulling $30,000 in the same year pushes a meaningful chunk into a higher bracket for no real benefit. Move 3. Understand exactly what delaying CPP is worth in real numbers. For every month you wait past 65, the payment grows by 0.7%. Over a full year, that's 8.4% guaranteed, inflation protected, and backed by the government, not the stock market. Take an average CPP payment of about $925 a month at 65. Delay it to 70, and that same payment grows to roughly $1,314 a month for the rest of your life. That's a difference of close to $4,662 a year, year after year, which for a lot of retirees covers a full year of property tax and home insurance combined. That's not a projection that depends on markets cooperating or a fund manager guessing right. It's locked in the moment you start collecting, and it never gets clawed back the way GIS does. I know the instinct is to take CPP the moment you're eligible, because it feels like finally getting something back after decades of paying into it. That instinct makes sense. But if a TFSA bridge and a modest RRSP draw can cover the gap for a few years, the trade usually favors patience. None of these 3 moves require predicting where markets go next year, and that's really the point. They rely on rules already written down, the same for every retiree in the same position, not on guessing correctly about something nobody can control. None of this next part has anything to do with spreadsheets, though. If waiting still feels wrong, if taking money later feels like losing some kind of game against the system, that reaction is completely normal, and it's worth understanding where it comes from. That's next. There's a psychological reason so many people rush to melt down their RRSPs, even when the math says to wait. It's called loss aversion, and it isn't a character flaw. It's just how people are wired. Losing $100 stings more than finding $100 feels good, even though they're the same amount. Your brain treats a future tax bill and a benefit check you're getting right now very differently, even when the real numbers say they shouldn't be treated that differently at all. If that describes how you feel about your own RRSP, that reaction makes complete sense. You didn't build that balance by accident. It took 30 or 40 years of contributions, some years easier than others. Some years you probably wondered if it was even worth it. Money protected that carefully starts to feel like part of you, not just a number on a statement. Feeling protective of it isn't irrational, it's human. This same bias shows up everywhere, not just with an RRSP. It's why people avoid opening a bill they suspect is bad news, or hold on to a losing investment a little too long, hoping it turns around before they have to admit the loss. None of that makes you undisciplined. It makes you human, reacting to wiring that never really adjusted for modern tax rules. A small shift helps here. Stop trying to win against the CRA, because that was never really the game you were playing. Start trying to win for the version of you at 85, still needing money to cover ordinary costs, groceries, hydro, the occasional car repair. A larger RRSP at 85 works like a safety net under your entire life. A smaller tax bill at 90 is closer to a footnote, Nobody but your executor will ever actually read. You spent decades building this account. It's allowed to protect you now. That matters more than winning a race against a number you were never actually required to beat. Don't melt down or convert your RRSP just because a video built for millionaires told you to. If your portfolio sits anywhere under $500,000, your biggest risk isn't the tax bill waiting at 71. It's losing GIS and OAS benefits you're entitled to right now this year. While that advice tells you to rush, the order still matters more than the balance. TFSA first. Delay CPP and OAS as long as you reasonably can. Draw RRSP money surgically up to your tax-free floor. And keep the account as a shock absorber for whatever life brings at 75 or 85. Not something to empty out at 66 because a headline scared you. If this helped you see that $400,000 is genuinely enough to retire well, without a corporation, without a private jet, without a specialist tax lawyer, hit subscribe. Every week, we work through the real numbers for Canadians who saved responsibly and just want to keep what they earned. That's the whole point of this channel, math that works for regular people, not just the ones with a holding company behind them. You already did the hard part. You saved, consistently, for decades, through years that weren't always easy. Now let the sequence do its job, and let the math work for you instead of against you.